My first video today is going to be an overview of how to work with the isometric grid. I know for a lot of you that's not such a problem. If you're having a little bit of trouble with that, as I know some of you are, hopefully this video will be of some use to you. If you don't really need help with that, you can skip ahead to another video. On my screen right now, you'll see a dot grid. Now the dot grid is what's on the paper that I provided. And the dot grid is used a lot so that if you're not drawing very heavy lines, they're a little easier to see. I happen to like the dot grid, but we're going to turn that off for a moment and go to a more traditional graph paper for now. So here we can see three different sets of lines. And this grid is exactly the same as the dot grid. If I put the dot grid back over it, you can actually see there's dots at each intersection. Now, just to take a moment, there was someone who asked me how you're supposed to count units on this graph paper. And the way you would do it is each unit is going to be tracked by counting the number of intersections you pass through. So that line right there is 3 units. So it means you went from here to here, from here to here, and here to here. And so that's 3 units. I know that this can be a little confusing, but I want to take a moment and let's look at the 3 different axes. So as we're drawing, we have height. And for the purposes of this drawing, I'm going to use red lines to indicate height. And height is always, in an isometric drawing, going to be a vertical line. There's also lines that show length. And length is going to be shown in an isometric drawing with a line following the angle of the left side of a y. And we could think of this as length or width. And I'm going to use green for my lines showing length. And finally, there's also going to be depth. And so depth goes from front to back. And lines for depth are going to be shown on an angle following the right side of a y. So those are the 3 different lines that you're going to need. There's height, which we draw with a vertical line. There's length, which is a line following the left side of a y. And there's depth, which is going to be a line following the right side of a y. Height is top to bottom, length is left to right, and depth is front to back. And so let's say we have 3 different views. We have front, top, and side. Now the front view, if we take the height and the length, those 2 together are going to create the front view. And I'm going to turn off the depth. So now we can see a graph paper that shows only the lines for height and length. And now, if I create my drawing using just those lines, that's going to create my front view. So I'm going to follow those. Let's say I decide I'm going to draw a J. So there's my J. And I can see that I follow the two sets of lines that I would use for front, the height lines and the length lines. And if I were to go over this, I could say that I want to make all my height lines red. And I want to make all of my length lines green. Now the length and the depth together, that's the green line and the blue line, those are angled lines. So length and depth are the two angled lines. If I put the two of them together, that's going to give me the top view. And I already have part of that drawn in. Now I could change my graph paper right now to only show the top view. So now I see only the two angled lines. And when I do that, anything I draw following those lines is going to be in the top view. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start showing the depth of this J. And so let's say I make it 2 units deep. I start drawing in these lines that show depth. And I can fill in another line right here that shows the other line there. And now I've created an entire top face. And I can go through. I'm going to draw in the other lines. Now, not all of these lines are going to be visible. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Because I've got, for instance, a line right here that I'm not drawing because I would never actually see it. So I'm going to get rid of that. And now I'm going to fill in the other lines for my top view. So I'm going to draw this line until it disappears behind the J. I'm going to draw this line. Now there is one more face, and we can see that I have a couple of spots where I didn't draw anything. I didn't finish off the face. So right here and right here, I did not finish those two faces. And those two faces are in the side view. And to draw the side view, what you would need is you need a different set of two lines. So the side view shows height and depth. And so if I take just those two, now I've got the side. And I'm going to turn off the length because the side view doesn't show length. I'm going to put the height back on, and now I can see the side view. And to finish off those faces, I really just need those two vertical lines. So I'm going to draw the height in red. I don't need to actually do anything for the depth because I already drew that in with my top view. So once I do that, now I have all of my lines drawn. And so by looking at two sets of lines at a time, I can draw each face. Hopefully that helps. As I said, if you're trying to count the units, all you need to do is look at the intersections. So each spot that I highlighted with a dot is an intersection. And if I come over here, I'm going to make another line. So now what I could do is just to show where they go. 4 units would be starting right here, going 1, 2, 3, 4. So it technically goes through 5 dots, but you don't count where you start. So if I'm starting right here, when I get to the first one, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I go up 1, 2, go over 1, go down 1, go over 1, 2, 3, 4, go up 1, go over 1, go down 2. So that's how you would count this. I go back 2, go over 1, go back 2, go down 1, go back 2, go back 2, go back 2, go down 2, go back 2, go over 1, and go over until I hit the edge. So that is just an example of how you can count those dots. Hopefully that was of some help. If you have questions, please let me know.